Welcome back to my channel where we share all things paranormal. And today, I have another creepypasta for you. This one comes from Reddit user WhiteFang42. They were returning home after a night of drinking. It was around 1:30 a.m. As they drove, they began to argue about who was going to drive them home. He was tall and thin and very well dressed. He was wearing a suit and tie and carried a briefcase. He also wore shoes that looked like they had been polished that day. And though he was walking down a dark country road in the middle of the night, he never seemed to cast a shadow. The passenger wanted the driver to keep going because he could still drive. But the driver refused. He said he had had enough. They stopped to offer him a ride. But when they got out of their truck, the man disappeared. They walked out into the fields behind the town. And after a while, they saw him. Farmers woke up to find that their livestock had been slaughtered. It didn't matter if it was a chicken, a pig, or a cow. None of the animals had any serious wounds. It was as if they'd simply evaporated into dust. He was sitting on a rock like he was waiting for them. You see, the pastor was not a man easily rattled. He'd seen his share of scary things during his career. But he was worried that the townspeople were beginning to lose their minds. So he gathered everyone together. He told them that this was a demon and that it was feeding on their fear. On her hands and feet, he could see what looked like burn marks. It was as if she'd been carrying a heavy weight on her hands and knees. And when she'd jumped off the roof, those weights had fallen away. He instructed them not to go outside, to lock their doors, and to pray for protection. They wanted to prove that the creature wasn't real, that it was all just a bunch of superstitious nonsense. But that night, they regretted their decision. When they looked out the window, they saw the man. They huddled together in the dark, hoping that whatever was out there would just pass them by. But then they heard a voice. It was a raspy whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It said, "Get out now." They tried to ignore it, but the voice persisted. Get out. Finally, the teens grabbed their things and ran as fast as they could from the cave. This creature was preying on the people of the town, feeding on their fear, and using their own minds against them. Everyone rushed to the window and looked out into the darkness. If you want to hear more creepy stories, check out the playlist in the description. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you're notified every time we upload a new video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Kneeling beside her, he could tell that she was dead. Blood was pouring out of her mouth and nose. Her eyes were wide open and staring. There, standing on a nearby roof, was the girl who had first spotted the man. She was kneeling on the roof with her arms outstretched toward the sky. Her mouth was wide open as she screamed at the top of her lungs. He was tall and thin, and his feet left large footprints in the tarmac. When the police examined the prints, they found that they were huge. They estimated that the man's feet were the size of dinner plates. They wanted to ask him some questions about the girl, but as he stood up, his foot hit something hard on the grass. He bent down and picked it up. It was one of the girl's shoes. The sole of the shoe was smooth, but on the bottom, the pastor could make out a series of strange symbols. They looked like letters, but they didn't form any words, and he had no idea what they meant. One of the teenagers yelled at him and threw a rock, but the rock went straight through the man's body, as if he weren't even there. They ran home in terror. There was a brief period of quiet. Then, in the early 1980s, the creature began appearing again. People saw it walking through the woods, heard it moving around in the trees. Some people even claimed that it was living in the woods, hiding in caves and hollowed-out trees. They searched for him, but they found nothing. Only a few moments later, when they returned to their truck, they noticed that their gas caps had been removed and placed nearby. Their engines had been drained of gas. His eyes were completely black, bottomless pits that stared directly at the pastor's soul. The couple watched as he strolled past a telephone pole. Normally, it would take a person at least 5 or 6 steps to get around the pole. But the man simply vanished. One moment he was there, and the next he was gone. The pastor instantly felt fear, shame, anguish, and despair. It was the worst feeling he'd ever experienced. She called her mother and told her what had happened. Her mother just laughed it off and went back to watching television. Then, a third family reported the same thing. After that, people began seeing the man. At first, it was only in glimpses. People would see him standing by the road, but when they approached him, he vanished. Sometimes people would hear him walking, but when they looked outside, they'd see nothing. So the passenger got out of the car and continued walking down the highway. And it's titled The Strange Case of Edmonson, Kentucky. Enjoy. On December 12, 1963, 2 men were in a car traveling down a lonely stretch of highway. About 10 minutes later, a little further down the road, a girl about 12 years old was walking along the side of the highway when she came across a man walking in the opposite direction. She tried to get his attention, to ask him what he was doing, but he didn't seem to acknowledge her at all. He just kept walking with his head up, staring straight ahead. She tried again, but he still wouldn't answer her or even acknowledge that she was there. He agreed that something wasn't right and promised to investigate. The police were contacted, but they found no evidence of anyone matching the man's description. And so, they concluded that the girl had made the whole thing up. When he passed her, she took a good look at him. As soon as she saw this, she turned and ran home. The next morning, the girl told her father about the man she'd seen. However, several weeks later, a local woman reported that a stranger had entered her barn and taken some apples and hay. Another farmer down the road reported a similar incident. One afternoon, two brothers were driving down the road when they spotted a figure standing beside the road. Another time, a group of teenagers decided to search for the man. Over the next few days, more strange things happened. A pastor and his wife were awakened in the middle of the night by heavy footsteps in the street outside their home. The pastor then got a good look at a man's face, and what he saw terrified him. The man's face was white, almost gray, and then just as quickly it was gone. The man turned and walked away. This is where the story takes a turn. But before he could finish speaking, a blood-curdling scream split the night. Then suddenly, she leaped off the roof and fell to the ground below. Then the pastor noticed something strange. At that moment, the police arrived and told the pastor that he needed to come with them. That's when the pastor knew that they were dealing with something truly evil. As the years went on, stories about the water creature continued to surface. As midnight approached, they heard heavy footsteps near the entrance of the cave. In the years since then, no one has spent the night in that cave. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that thumbs up button and share with others.